Right, today's project, we're going to pull the stock running boards off the Excursion. This is an 02 7.3 Power Stroke Excursion. But we're going to pull the stock, these plastic running boards off. I actually had a tire explode on this back right corner. We just got it back from the body shop, but this quarter, the rear quarter got real tore up from the tire coming apart. And then you can see this running board actually is bent pretty bad, smashed the light. So the body shop checked with Ford. They can't get these running boards, the OE running boards anymore. So it was either from the Facebook groups, I found a couple guys that were willing to send me some or to go aftermarket. So I just decided we're gonna pull these off and then go with the Amp Research running boards, see how those work out. But so I went with the power steps. Let's see here, if I can get you guys a part number, what these are. If not, I can put it in the description. Here we go. So it is 7513-01A. So this covers the Super Duties and Excursions from 0203 and then 08 to 16, and it includes they've got like LED lights. So here, if you unbox the kit, you've got your two steps, then you've got the arms. So there's in one box you've got the actual geared arms that are driven by these motors. That pair was in box 1. This pair of non-powered arms was in box 2. And then these motors were in box 3 with the rest of the gear. I'll show you guys. But I decided before I'd assemble these little covers were already on. And I decided to pop these off and grease the internal gearing. There was actually no grease at all in the gears. So I've never greased something and regretted it. Lubrication definitely is helpful on most mechanical parts. So step 1 is going to be to mount these motors up on here. But before we get carried away with the new gear, we got to take the old running boards off. So you need to get yourself, I'm going to use an impact with a 13 mil. You can use a regular ratchet, whatever you want to do there. So that we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 brackets for the OE running boards, and those all have to come off. They're basically, there's like a nut cert that goes around this part of the rocker panel, and then there's a bolt up here that goes through the body panel. So we got to pop all those off on both sides. I already popped this side off, pretty easy peasy. And then there's for the factory lighting, there's a loom that comes up, and it's tucked up here. This is the rear of the truck. We're looking at the back end, the pumpkin, but there's a connector on both sides. So not sure what I'm going to do to seal that up. I need to pop that connector off. I don't believe the amp gear plugs into that. I think it's separate. We'll have to get into it and find out. But if that's an open connection, we'll have to do something there, seal that off. I think we've got one. Yeah, same deal over here. So that's the factory lighting. Might be able to tap into that, and it'd be nice actually to cut this loom off down here and get the amp stuff tied into the factory lighting. We'll see here. I'll see where I want to go. I know they've got some cheesy crimp connectors and stuff in their kit. Definitely not going to be using that on my truck. I'm going to be soldering everything, doing it right. So here's the other stuff that was in box 3. So some zip ties, give you an Amp Research sticker. Not worried about that. This is the factory wiring loom from Amp. So I believe there's 2 connectors that will go into their power control module. This goes under the hood, I believe. I haven't dug into the, we'll learn as we go here. We're making some assumptions right now, power leads. Then I think this ends for the motors themselves. And I'm sure we have wiring in here for our lights, but these are the lights I was talking about. So they're low profile LEDs. I think they just stick on the rocker panel. So it'd be kind of nice if they were actually on those pinch welds and you could bolt them on, but my truck's undercoated, so I'm not sure how we're going to do with sticky pads, but we'll find out. Yeah, but these butt connectors, we're not going to be using these. They're junk. It's just a matter of time before the water gets in there and fails. Solder connections if you can. So I've got a Milwaukee M12 soldering iron that is absolutely awesome for in the garage. Grommets for the light wiring for those. These 2, I believe, are for connecting up the trigger wires for the doors. More nut certs basically to replace the factory ones, I believe. I think these bolts here will be to mount the steps, and then we've got some other hardware here, kind of just organizing stuff. We've got one unique washer that I'm guessing goes with this bolt. Not sure where this nut goes yet. There's no matching hardware for it. And then they've got one little L bracket. But yeah, let's get into it. We'll pull the factory running boards off, and we'll go from there. Okay, we got them off. So easy, just buzzing all those nuts out, and then these are the nut certs that were on the rocker themselves. So I think we'll just pop those off. I believe we'll be reusing some of these holes. I'm sure not all of them, so be sure to hit them with a bit of undercoating or a bit of paint, clean those up so you can see where old brackets were. Get these all pulled off. But yeah, as you can see, this truck's an 02, so undercoating works. This is a Pennsylvania truck, West Virginia, Pennsylvania. I bought it, I don't know, 15 years ago in West Virginia. It's a ZF6 manual, so been swapped into it. But yeah, undercoating is definitely saves an old vehicle. Want to keep this truck forever, so keep it looking good. Cross through the field, but we got some mud under here. But all right, let's get into putting the new ones on. We're mounting these motors onto the powered arms. So got this little cover plate. This came on already. I took it off to grease these guys, so we're gonna pop this back on again. And then that's the orientation those motors go. So you're gonna wanna orient it correctly. So you're basically pointing the motor down towards that step. So when you pop these on, you kind of have to, there's a hole in that casting for this pin. See the pin on the gear? So that's basically where that pin's gonna end up, but the mesh of the gear might not be correct for the motor. So you gotta get that pin started and then kind of crank the motor back and forth until it flops in there. And these are 4mm Allen cap screws. I'm throwing a little Loctite on there, and then the torque spec in the manual's 36 inch-pounds, not foot-pounds. So go easy, either use a T-handle or, better yet, grab yourself a torque wrench. Okay, so we're gonna install the arms onto the truck. So they want the drive linkage assembly to mount towards the front of the truck. So the arm that's got the drive motor on it is towards the front on Super Duties and Excursions. I think I saw some older sets that had that backwards. The Excursion was different. It was flipped where the drive motor was on the rear, but this set, they've got it on the front of the truck. And then up here, it's telling you where it goes. Use second and the last set of mounting holes. So the idler will be towards the rear. Idler mounts in rear. So that means the motorized arm, what that means with second is first original mounting plate, second, so this is where our drive will go, drive arm, the one with the motor. And then we've got two in the middle, 1, 2, and then this is the last one. So this one, this is where the instructions specify you've got to drill a new hole. So they've basically got factory, the Excursions have 1, 2, 3 holes. So the mounting bolts for the original running boards were in these 2 holes. This one wasn't used, and this hole did not exist. So what you want to do is take a tape and template the spacing here. I actually measured off the bottom of the rocker to center, and then from center to center, and then mark out this hole here. And they say to drill a 25/64 hole. So that's what I did. It's definitely not as big as the original holes. I'm tempted to go a little bit bigger so that just doesn't fight me if there's a bit of tolerance mismatch here, but we'll try that and see how we go. I did mock up just an idler back here on the other corner. I haven't drilled this hole yet just to make sure everything mounted up okay. Since this truck took a hit on this corner, I had to straighten this rocker just a tiny bit. It wasn't bad, but just got to level out and made sure that was going to sit nice and flush and level. It's fine. So I'll pull that one off and drill this hole. What I want to do is recommend, if you drill a hole, basically these trucks, I'm sure from the factory, all the holes were punched in them, the sheet metal before it was painted. So since I'm going to deburr this here, but you've got shiny metal in there, so paint that. That way you don't have bare metal getting wet. So what I'm going to do is take a wire wheel, clean this up, put a coat of paint on this, and then I'll undercoat the truck again after these go on. But just a little extra step there. You've got a fair bit of bare metal in that hole, so make sure you paint that up. Okay, let's get them mounted up. Okay, after you're ready to install the arms, you're going to have 2 of these nut certs. These are the factory ones, so pull them out. The kit comes with new ones, but they go threaded side goes in. You slide it through, and then that little threaded insert will be equal with the hole in the, aligned with the hole in the rocker panel. So I've got them all installed. Show you how they look. So those top 2 bolts go into the nut certs. The bottom of this housing is threaded. So that's what these cap head screws. These are stainless, but they go through the rocker on the outside. So you put a washer on each one of those, and they thread right into the casting itself. And then the top ones go through. But yeah, so on the front we got both of the motor units on, and the back one we've got the idlers on with no motor. Time to do some wiring. Okay, next we're gonna get into some wiring. So these kick panels, they just pull right off, so grab them and pull up. They've got little tabs on the bottom. Set this aside. Floor mats out if you got them. And we're gonna have to roll this carpet up. So these guys, there's a little, you can pop this up in the back. They've got a couple tabs that have to pull straight back. One, there's the top one, and then there's one on the bottom. There's 2. And then in here, there's this little, it's like a straight, I don't know what these are called. It's like an interior push pin, I guess I'd call it. But pull that out, set it aside, and then this kick panel will come out. So there's the 2 that have to pull straight back. There's like a little alignment pin on the top. So now we're into all the wiring here. And the reason that's got to come out is we've got to pull this carpet back because there's a grommet in the floor. Hadn't had the carpet up in this. It looks pretty good. Sometimes if you get moisture, the floor gets rusty, but yeah, that looks right. Okay, so this grommet here is the one we're going to be after to run the trigger wire through from the bottom. So we'll have to get from the bottom of the truck and run that through into the cab, and then we're going to be digging into these wire harnesses, I believe, to find the, oh, I forgot I did have this apart. This is for my backup camera. Yeah, got some wiring I already put in here. So that's passenger side. Driver's side, I already pulled the kick panel off. The other thing we're going to have to do is pull the driver's side door panel off. So this panel has to come off. So this little sit wing window area, pull that, oh geez. Phone's going for a ride. It's the same thing, little pull pins on these guys. So it pulled straight out away. You can see the 2 slots there. And then this guy, this section here, this darker tan section with all the controls on it, it has to come out, and then you pull it straight up. And then after it's up, pull it out of the way and just unplug these connectors, and they've all got little tabs on them. So push the release tab and then pop the connectors out. This one's on the back side. We'll go from the front back. So this one's here. Push that with your thumb, and apparently I need a GoPro because I can't do this and do this at the same time. This one, yeah, both these are on the other side. So see those tabs? 1, 2. So squeeze and pull. one will fight you. Just wasn't pushing the tab hard enough. Okay, so now that we got those apart, tuck these down in. And then this guy has to come out. If you've got a reflector that's still not broken in here, it has to come out. And there should be a screw here. Mine is not. I must have misplaced it when I last had this door panel off. I think those are the only 2 screws that you need to take out. Let's see here. I think this is a 7mm. Yeah, it is. Ratchet down. Okay, pop that out. Now this door panel, I believe, pops out. I'm trying to remember how I did this last time. It's been a while. Is there one inside now? Nothing in the map pocket. Oh, there we go. So lift straight up on the door panel and then pull it off the truck. And then I believe you'll have a couple, yeah. So this little memory, seat memory, is gonna have a plug, and then the light on the door. Gotta unplug it. I think this is a quarter turn. Yeah, pop that off. And then this, not sure, I can't quite feel it yet. Oh yeah, got a tab on it. So tab on the side. I think that was towards the rear of the door. Pull straight down. Okay, so that is the door panel. Set it aside. And then this cover is going to have to get pulled up. Just drape that on the lock for now. So that'll give us, I believe we're going to get into this harness here. I don't know if the speaker's got to come out yet or not, but anyway, so that's getting the truck apart and getting ready for wiring. So next we'll get under the hood, get the harness routed and terminated to the battery. Okay, here's where it pays to read ahead some of the instructions. So this is the wiring harness laid out on the floor here. So we've got underneath the hood, we're gonna have the control module. This guy here. So it's gonna plug in to these 2 connectors, and then short distance away, we're gonna be tapped onto the battery leads, right? So that's all under the hood, that's all good and well. Then the long lead, since we're tapped onto the passenger side battery, the long side is gonna go driver's side. The short side is gonna go passenger side. So over here on the passenger side of the harness, they've got 4 wires coming out, and these are the trigger wires for each door, for all 4 doors. So the 2 greens are actually for the driver's doors, and the yellow and white are for the passenger doors. So in their manual, they've got a section for 08 and up trucks and 02 and 03 without power locks. So this Excursion is an 02 with power locks. So that section is this section. So steps 13 to 23 are for 02 to 03 with factory remote keyless entry. So this is where it gets stupid in AMP Research's part, in my opinion. So we've got, and I mean, I shouldn't say stupid on their part, just because they're making one kit, mass producing these kits for multiple years and models of trucks. So I'm guessing the vast majority of trucks, they can pick up their trigger wires on the passenger side. Unfortunately for me, with this 02, and if you have an 02 or 03 Excursion or Super Duty with keyless entry, you're going to be in the same boat as me. So they've got this step in here, right here, and what they're saying is 02 and 03 model year trucks require the green and green violet, so that's the 2 greens on the passenger side of the loom, to be routed over to the driver's side of the vehicle. Attach extra lengths of both wires to the harness and run under the carpet from passenger side to driver's side. So essentially what they want you to do is scab some additional wire onto the 2 greens there, and then snake it under the carpet in the truck and over, and then basically you're going to be able to do all your wiring, snaking the passenger side over to the driver's side, and all 4 wire pickups you're going to do apparently on, no, I'm sorry, I'm getting confused. So those are all on the passenger side, and 2 of them need to be on the driver's side. So they want you to route the 2 greens from passenger across over to driver's side, because we're going to need to terminate 2. The driver's side wires, both on the driver's side of the truck, and so those will be the green ones that get run across, and then the yellow and white that come on the passenger side already get terminated over here. So I think what I'm going to do, instead of trying to use my snake and snake under the carpet and all that silliness, is I'm going to redo their harness so that these wires, I'm going to pull the greens back up to where the mass pin connector is, and then snake them down the loom, down the actual driver's side of the harness. That way, when I route it, they're on the right side of the truck. Now, what I'm not sure about, I'll probably end up soldering some wire extensions on here so that they come out of the harness in the right spot, because that's what I'm not sure yet, is where they're gonna land. Basically, what I need to figure out is on this loom, where that grommet in the carpet underneath the driver's side that I showed you, where that grommet is lengthwise on this loom. So I think what I'll do is probably solder some extra wires on these guys after I pull them out of the passenger side of the harness, put them into the driver's side of the harness, and wherever they end, I'll solder some extra wire onto there and route them a bit deeper into the harness, then route it through the truck, and then I'll pull it back so that it matches where the grommet is, and then tape that off, and then we'll route it through the truck. That way we don't have to route under the carpet. I mean, it's up to you whether you think routing under the carpet's easier, or whether when the harness is out of the truck. I just think this split loom's really easy to work with. I'll just cut the tape there, and then you can literally just pull it back, and then with your thumb throw it in that side. It shouldn't take too long at all. I'll do it and I'll update you on how much time I had. Okay, that wasn't too bad. Pulled I just cut the tape. There's I'll show you, there's tape where these trigger wires come out. So I just unraveled it. It wasn't that bad to find the end. Put some new on, but basically pulled the loom off this whole bundle back to the end, stripped the greens out, put the loom back on, and then ran the greens down this loom. So they're poking out down there. They're red now. So those 2 bundles of red that came in the kit, I soldered them with the Milwaukee solder gun, soldered them, or iron, not gun, but soldered them on. One thing to do when you take, these wires are the same length. So since you're in a loom, it's good to cut one back, so make them like this. Then solder your wires on, tape them real tight, and then they'll fit in the loom a bit better. So that's what I did. But yeah, the black striped one, I just put a couple pieces of black tape, is the green with the violet stripe. The other one's the green. So that way I can identify what wire's what after I run it through the truck. But this loom here, you can see like where the plug is for the actuator, for the arm. The trigger wires are not far from it. So once I ran those greens in there, it was very obvious that I'm going to need a good bit more wire to get there. So I'm poking out, I don't know, 2 feet from that connector. We'll see how we do. But I've got enough red, I think, to get up through there. Hopefully AMP gave you enough wire. So to be continued. We'll get this hooked up to the battery and the controller mounted, and we'll start running looms. Okay, getting this all wired up here a little bit. We've got the battery leads terminated to the passenger side battery. This is a 7mm nut on both these battery terminals, so easy peasy there. I think I'm gonna tuck this module up in the passenger fender, and then there's a loom here that works its way across. So I think I'm gonna take this bundle that comes out of that and zip tie it to that loom to get it all tidied up. And then up and over, this dives down into the passenger well. So I've got a fish rod kit that I used. So from the bottom, I was actually able to see light here, and I pushed that rod from the bottom up through so it pokes out. Give you an idea where, right in here. So the AC lines, it's basically poking out with them. So those AC lines that run front to the back passenger rear pokes out with them. And then the driver's side, I haven't done yet, but I'll kind of show you what that rod looks like when it's shoved through. So that's the tip of it poking up, and that's the bottom of it. So I think what I'm going to do here is the ECU's on the firewall, so I think I'm going to go on the passenger side of that connector. Hang on, let me get a light, see if it helps. So that rubber grommet that's pulled back, that's the mass pin connector of the ECU. So you can see this glow in the, well, actually glows in the dark. So that goes just on the passenger side of that. I think that's where I'm going to go with it. Now that grommet, you can see those two large wires, and that looks like a flexible straw. That's my boost gauge. And then the big black and red wires are to an inverter I have in the back. But I'm beginning to think, since this driver's side harness is going to go right past that grommet, I might pull those two wires I extended back in the harness till they're even with that grommet, and then snake into the cab there instead of up through the grommet in the floor. I hate to poke holes in the floor of my truck. Obviously, the floor of the truck's going to get wet underneath, so if it's up in the firewall area, you're a heck of a lot likely to get any water in the truck. So I think I'm going to go in there, but that's where we're at so far. I'll keep cranking away. Okay, pretty easy wiring. So got that all zip tied, ran it under, it's actually behind that wire tray. I just used probably 5 zip ties across there, but tucked it up behind. I hate when you pop a hood on a vehicle and you can tell, well, someone added something there. So try to hide it all and make it as factory looking as possible. And then it ducks down, there it is. So my last zip tie is right here on the factory harness, and then it goes down. I aborted on where I told you guys before, so it's actually left of that grommet that I was shooting for. So see the harness going down there? If you shoot between that grommet and the ECU harness, you can't get that plug that's on the end of that loom through the inner fender and the firewall. They're, you know, the fasteners that hold the inner fender in there are just, the gap's way too tight. So I'm snuck down a bit closer to the center of the truck on the passenger side of that firewall grommet that I was showing you guys before. So here's the master cylinder. It's basically right behind the master cylinder where it ducks down under. But yeah, and then I did peel off, you can see those 2 green ones that I was telling you about, the green and purple and green. So they do poke through that firewall grommet. Worked pretty well. Easy peasy. I already had a couple wires through it, so show you where it comes out inside the truck. So my clutch pedal, well, never mind. You guys won't have a clutch pedal, most likely, but where the brake pedal would be, you're gonna, well, let's go off the steering column. So if I can get my light, yeah, there's a steering column, and then just to the left of it, there's a grommet. It's like got a 90-degree boot on it. It's the grommet for that mass wires connector, the bundle, the main bundle that comes into the truck. So I've stuck a couple other wires in there, and you can see the green ones coming down through, and I'll clean them up, get them under the carpet. But there's my splices for the red. I'm gonna need them because they only make it to just about the emergency brake hood release area. But I'm gonna have to sneak up through the flex loom into the door and then catch the rear door in here somewhere. But yeah, that's how I did it, and tons of loom hanging out down here. Let's see if I can show you where this pops down below. I showed you the other one. So there's your body mount, leaf spring perch. So right in there. So nice and easy to zip tie to the frame. No worries there. All right, let's run them back to the steps and get onto our door triggers. This is this part's not that fun, I'll tell you guys what. This boot here that you're supposed to run this straw through from Amp Research, that's not possible. You cannot get that straw out through here on the Excursion. Inside the door panel, on the other side of this panel, there's a plastic like wire trough loom holder So you can feel it if you stick your finger in here. You can't go straight into the truck. It won't come out. So what I did was held a light up against this hole to see where the light was spilling out, and most of the light's spilling out towards the firewall. So I made a little coat hanger threader thingy. There's the end of it. Let's see if I can get up in here. Bear with me. There's a ton of stuff in the way, as I'm sure you already know if you're doing this job. So that sticker is the harness. It's like a hard plastic kind of stuff. So the other side of that harness is the hole in the door where that boot attaches. So you can see to the right there, that gold, that is the coat hanger. That's where the light's spilling out towards the back of that harness. So I threaded the coat hanger in there, and then that's why I got the boot popped out, so I can get the other end of that coat hanger. So this straw goes through the boot and pokes out. You can see the straw on the top there. And then behind that, pull the straw back out some. Behind that, see above, it's really hard to tell. So the green wire, what's on top of that is the actual straw, and that gold on top of that is the coat hanger. So everything is to this joint here. So now what I'm gonna do is, this is just a piece of wire I had spare in the garage here. I'm fishing that through the straw. I'm gonna come out the end of the straw, grab it with a pair of like electrical pliers or needle nose or anything. You know, basically gonna grab the end of that wire when it comes out the straw, pull it out into where I can get it, then pull the boot back some and get that coat hanger tip out here, and then electrical tape my wire to that, and then I'll pull it back out. That way I've got a wire to fish my actual trigger wire that I need in the door. So wish me luck. Here we go. Okay, wire through the boot, taped onto the hanger. Let's hope the tape holds, because it wasn't the easiest to get that wrapped in the door jamb. Use a full coat hanger if you got one. I just had a little chunk in the garage, so if this doesn't work, guess who's going to get a full coat hanger? But yeah, more wire would be better, because you could get it out here and tape onto it a little easier. But okay, so this is the wire I pulled through. This is the trigger wire for the system. So we should be able to pull this baby through. Try not to get a clutch pedal. And then let's try to make sure this routes correctly. That's pretty good. I'll leave a little slack because I'm gonna zip tie this up to the main harness here. Keep it away from the clutch. So yeah, now we're out. So now I can route down, and then in this loom here, I cut this jacketing off. Their directions say that the driver's door you want yellow with a black stripe. So I checked, there's two yellow wires in here. This one does not have any stripe at all. And I can't see, oh, there's another yellow. A couple more yellows. It's just solid yellow. But yeah, I think that yellow with a black stripe, I'm gonna test each one. So the way I do instead of these silly crimp connectors is I will take a pair of wire cutters, strippers, and I will get a pair that you're comfortable with, or if you're not, a knife can work. But what you wanna do is cut the jacket, and then about an inch away, cut the jacket again, but don't cut the wire, because there's not a lot of wire here. You'd have to splice something in if you cut it off. And then take a very sharp knife and skin just the surface of that insulation between the two cut lines. And then you can take it off, and you've got about an inch of bared wire. And that allows you to do two things. One is to test that you got the right wire, because they're saying that the wire goes to ground when the door's closed and is open when it's open. So I'm gonna test each one before I terminate to it and solder it in. And then you can take and skin back the, an inch of insulation off your trigger wire, wrap it around, and then solder that, and then tape that all up. So that's what I'm gonna do here. I'll do that, test it, and I'll get back to you guys. Okay, we got Just want to update you guys. Learned something that I don't want you to do. So in the manual, it shows you tapped off this little short bit of harness. So I dug into this after, see, I skinned this black and yellow we were looking at before, tested it against ground, and it does not go to ground when I shut the door. So I'm like, well, there has to be two black and yellows, and sure enough, there are. So I got into this harness to see if there's only a single, and there's not. There's two in here as well. Now, the key is there's two small black and yellows, these 16 gauge black and yellows. There's a fat, like number 12 wire that's also black and yellow in here. So there's actually 3 in this harness and 2 in the small harness. I don't know where that other one goes, but so you want the number 16, the thinner, there's a pair of thin wires. So unfortunately it's a guess and check since there's 2 identical black and yellows. So you can see, that's got a black stripe on it, and then I'm on this guy that's also a black stripe. So those are the 2, number 16. And then you can see this fat one here. No, that's not it. You'll have to take my word for it. It's buried in this harness somewhere. I've been all through it looking, but yeah, there is another black and yellow in there. But so basically I've got gator clips. One's on the screw here, screw head. The other's on, this is what I was talking about before. So basically, take a pair of strippers. It's set for 16 gauge, so you can't cut your wire off, and then strip, you know, just bite into the insulation, and then take a sharp knife and skin it. And then I'm just going to take this gator clip on there. It's on my fluke. So when it's connected to that wire and ground, got ground to this one, that's to the wire. We've got a real high, you know, it's floating around a 0.5 kilo ohm, so not ground, that's for sure. So if we close this guy, should have rolled the windows down before I started the project. See if I can zoom in on that screen before I close it. So 25 ohms. It was 2.5 last time I checked it, so that is our door wire. Must have a crappy connection on that screw head there. It's not the same as it was. Definitely got a good one over here. So that's how I'm gonna check each door, is one at a time. Check for ground. I don't know if the other ones have multiple colors. I'll try to update you as I go. I think in the manual it said the back, the driver's rear door. This one, it also has multiples. So if you do know it has multiples ahead of time, what I like to do is get a pair of needle nose pliers and a needle, like a sewing needle, and poke into the jacket so you don't have to skin back a wire that you really don't need to skin. It just preserves more of the insulation if you're not gonna make a termination on it. So just a thing I like to do if I know that there's multiples and I've got to do a guess and check. So hope that helps. Okay, so that's what you're after. That's that trigger wire twisted and soldered around that guy. That will not fail. Those crimp connectors, it's only a matter of time and they will get moisture. I just have not had good luck with them long term. They'll work for a little bit, long enough for you to think everything's all good, and then you'll be like, man, why aren't my steps working? And then you'll be digging back into these door panels again or into your sill plates, but that will not fail. It's worth the extra effort. So get yourself a soldering iron, or hook up with a buddy who knows how to solder, and it's not hard. It's not hard at all. Just loop that wire around that, and really the basics of soldering are you take the tip of that iron and you hold it on, while it's warm, you hold it on that wire, and solder will go to heat. So after you get that soldering tip on there, hold it on there a little bit and let it get warm. You can't leave it too long. Don't worry about it. You're not going to fry anything with a soldering iron. It doesn't get hot enough. And then feed in a little bit of solder and just work your way down. Just basically cover that whole area with fresh solder. It'll keep wicking that solder right into where the heat is. So move your iron tip along there until you've got that all just really nice and wetted with solder, and then let her cool down and tape it up. Okay, tape it back up like we were never here. There's a little like a push tab that goes into the door to hold that harness tight. So you got to pop that out of the door and tape it back into the harness, and then push the harness back in the door. There's another one over here, so if you pull these away, that's what you can do. But yeah, speaker back in, get the door buttoned up, move on to the rear one. Hey, I like to give tool sizes as I go. I kind of forgot to do that, but I think I misspoke on the battery terminal. That's 8 mil, not 7, I believe, if my memory serves me right. These bolts here are 7 on the door, the top and bottom bolts, and then the speaker. I was using a, let's see, what is this guy? 7/32, I think. Yeah, 7/32. So that's for the 4 bolts in the speaker. But I'll try to do better keeping up with tool sizes. Yeah, I think I don't know if I missed any other ones. I think the Allen heads for these rocker arms, or the arms, swing arms, were 3/16, and then the inner bolts were 13 millimeters. I don't know if I quoted those or not. Okay, passenger rear door. It's a yellow stripe, light green, with a yellow stripe on it. So where I'm at, that's the kick panel. Come back, and this harness actually splits. The main harness goes under this is the front driver's seat. Zoom out so you can kind of tell where I'm at. Front driver's seat, basically the recline lever. Right under that, this is the harness that goes back to the rear door. So there's a lot fewer wires in digging through this main harness. I was gonna pull this apart and dig in here, and I was like, well, this looks like there's a lot less here, so I got plenty of wire to get back here. So, and then do another test with your meter. So door closed. Let me flip my fluke up here. Door closed, 5.2 ohms. And door open. We got back in the kilo ohms, 96 kilo ohms. So that's definitely the door trigger. Solder it up. Okay, putting the sill plate back on is pretty self-explanatory, but just make sure wherever you put your wiring in, that when it routes back in under the carpet, or if you're wiring this tray, that you're clear of all these wells for the snaps for the sill plate. So they've got these snap connectors on them. So just make sure you're not going to snap your wire down in, or the step's going to be grounded all the time and it's going to be deployed all the time. So don't smash your wire. So yeah. Okay, and I just plugged my fuse in. The other side's just dangling still, but just make sure nothing's touching anything. And plug your fuse in, and then you can test, make sure before you get too carried away. So there's one. And then the rear. One side done. All buttoned up. Over to the other side. Yeah, using the same method with the meter, closing the door. I found the front passenger side. So it is gray with a red stripe. Let's see if I can roll it over here. See the stripe. Yeah, there's the red stripe. I am at the kick panel, so there's a glove box. I'm right below it. One thing to watch, this came apart for me. So this black hose, it actually goes up, and you see there's a 90-degree, looks like a grommet. That's actually your rear wiper washer. So washer fluid will squirt through that. And I've had that happen in the past, that little 90-degree plastic fitting. So the grommet part is rubber, and the hose, that 90 on the hose, is actually plastic. And then it works into rubber down here farther. But yeah, be careful, because that, when you're pulling this kick panel cover off that covers all this stuff, you'll potentially pop that connector off, and you'll end up with a wet floor. So just a little caution there. Okay, I wanted to talk real quick about where I poked those trigger wires on the passenger side up. So this is the passenger side arm. So right above it, there's a grommet here, but just beside it, there's these 2 holes, 1, 2. And the reason I found these was I had the carpet pulled up, and I came down here and I could see light. Like you can see there's carpet there. So these, I think, were plugged with silicone at one point, because my floor's not rusted out and it doesn't even look wet inside. But I was poking around, and like tiny silicone plugs that were in here fell out while I was poking around. So I need to re-silicone these anyway. So I just brought my trigger wires up through there. So I'm gonna fill both these holes with silicone, and there's actually 2 more. You can see 1, 2, and they still have the factory silicone in it. So even if you use the grommet, take a peek at these holes and make sure, like mine, there's no way they weren't leaking a little bit because that silicone was not sealed anymore. So I will take a peek at those too, and I'll probably shoot some silicone down from the top regardless, just to make sure they're good and sealed. But that's where I put mine. The last one's in the same spot as the opposite rear seat, so I'm on the passenger rear. This is my yellow wire for the passenger rear. Got the white one spliced in up here. So same spot. It's about where the recline lever is on the front passenger seat. So these wires come under the seat and route around. So this is, you can see, coming from out from behind, or I guess under that seat. So, and then it turns and must head to this rear door. So I tested it with the meter, same way, but this is the one. So pink with a blue stripe. Okay, I got those holes siliconed up, all 4 of them. Can't really, hit the power seat. But little silicone trick, I don't know if you know it. Some people do, some people don't. But if you put silicone on something and you need to smooth it out, like I got it laid down real nice. But spit on your finger and rub it on there, and the silicone doesn't stick to you at all, and it gets it real nice and smooth. If you don't like spitting on your finger, you can use soapy water too, but just a little silicone finishing trick for tub surrounds and stuff like that. It works too. Anytime you're needing to tool silicone into a smooth, bead, or make the finish look a bit better, works great. Okay, so now that we got the running boards all installed, I wanted to play with these little lights, these LEDs, because the way the amp stuff works, I believe, since the amp has a output for the lighting, that these are only going to come on when you pull a door handle and the running board deploys. My I guess issue with that is the OE wiring that we unplugged from the OE running boards. I remember if you would unlock or lock the truck or anything with keyless entry or open the door, the lights would come on. So I thought it'd be nice if I could get them to utilize both the amp wiring and the OE wiring to allow them to kind of act as puddle lights. If I would unlock or lock the truck from a remote distance and you're walking up to the truck, it'd be cool if these came on and illuminated the ground around the truck. And then the amp, I'll wire those up as well. I think you could probably omit the amp wiring, and the running board lighting would work fine with the stock wiring, but I kind of want to cover both bases that way so that they'll come on when the amp box wants them to, or when the OE wiring would. So I wanted to play around a little bit with these. So I've got a benchtop supply here set to 12 volts, and it is capped at, I've got it capped at 5 amps at 12 volts. So if I hook this guy up, what I would give for a tripod. So it comes on as you'd expect, and it's extremely low current. So 0.022, so not even a quarter amp. It's 2/200ths of an amp. So basically 4 of these, all 4 of them together, is going to be less than a quarter amp at 12 volts. So really, really low current. So that said, I've got I don't know if you guys are familiar with diodes, but a diode, consider it, if you're not an electrical person that understands componentry, this is basically a check valve, like in plumbing, that only lets water flow one direction. So the diode itself has a stripe on it, and that indicates which way the current is going to be allowed to flow. So the load would be on the stripe side, and the current can flow through the diode one way, but if it's energized on the other side, it will not flow back through the diode. So it's used a lot in circuits to protect things from unwanted voltage, or voltage reverse polarity, that sort of protection. So what we can do with this is, let me put you down for a minute. I will clip this diode in line with my power connector, and if I touch that on that lead, that, as we would expect, the current flows through the diode because the stripe is pointing towards the load, which is the LED, and we get roughly the same current. Okay, so if I put you back down and I'm going to flip the diode, so the stripe is now going to point towards the power supply, not the load, nothing happens. So what that means is we can use these to hook two separate power circuits to one load safely. That way, if the amp system comes on and energizes these lights, that power can't feed back to the OE circuit on the truck, and vice versa if the OE circuit comes on. So I drew up a little sketch here. This is what I'm thinking to do. So battery of the truck, the amp research box, this is just the two positive and negative lead. I basically just drew the positive out here. I kind of trying to simplify this drawing. We'll just say everything's grounded. The black lead on the LEDs, the amp box. This would be the black lead on the lines running out to the LEDs. There's basically both of these wiring harnesses have a black and a red lead for the LED, but we're just, for simplicity's sake, saying all that's grounded on the truck. So this is a symbol, electric symbol for a diode, and what that's saying is that the current can only flow in this direction. So if power is applied on this side, which would be from the amp box, power is going to flow into the LED and illuminate the LED. And then we've got this here. This is another wire I'm going to tap in on the LED side of the diode, and it's also tapped to the other LED. So we've got two diodes, one for each power feed from the amp box, and then a third diode. This would be the OE power. So this is the power plug under the truck that I unplugged the OE running boards. So there's two wires there. One's a positive and a negative, a ground. So if we put a diode here, that allows current to flow this way and illuminate the LED. But if so, let's say power's only on the OE, not the amp, right? We want to protect the amp box. So that 12-volt power would energize, flow through the diode, illuminate both LEDs since they're grounded, and then if power tries to flow through these diodes to the amp research box, it's not going to work. It's going to be blocked by that diode. So vice versa, if this is off, the amp box is on, power flows through these two diodes to each LED, it would energize this wire to the point where the diode's connected, and then it would block power from going back feeding into the truck. So I just don't know what's on the line side of this plug. So basically what's upstream of that plug. I don't know if you would apply 12 volts to this plug. Does it turn all of the lights on, for example, in the truck? I don't know. I don't have a wiring diagram for the truck, and I really don't care if I put a diode in here. I just want to make sure that this amp box isn't allowed to, it doesn't have too much load on it. These are very, very low power, so I would guess the circuitry in the amp box is designed for a very low power circuit. And we all know the Excursion didn't have LEDs when it came out 20 years ago, so I know the lighting inside the truck's going to draw way more than 200ths of an amp. So, but that's my plan of how I'm going to wire the lights on this truck. So feel free to copy and do the same, or skip ahead and consider your job done after you factory, because you could just factory wire these LEDs to your amp box, or you could spare off these amp leads and wire your OE power to the LEDs so that it works as the truck did in factory. So I'm just gonna, as an engineer usually does, overcomplicate things, but I'll get what I want out of it, hopefully. Cool. Okay, a little progress update. So painted those screw heads black, just from away from the truck. They stick out like a sore thumb since the rocker's all undercoated in black. Cleaned off a spot for each light, measured. From the front door seam, the seam of the front edge of the, I should say the front edge of the front door, you measure back 27 inches, and then the next one is 65 inches, and drill yourself a 9/32 hole in the actual pinch weld of the rocker. So, and then you put that grommet in there, and then you thread your light wire through, and then make sure this is good and clean. I cleaned it with degreaser, and then I used rubbing alcohol to clean it up real good. That way it sticks to the paint as good as it possibly can. And then what I did was soldered on my diodes to the positive lead before they went in, just to make less soldering under the truck afterwards. I was hoping to harness that all up with wire and just slide it through the hole, but that hole is very tight for the wire size. So I think I was going to get greedy and then not be able to slide it through there. So we'll go this route and then do some soldering under the truck. So 2 in, 2 to go. Okay, we're under the truck. Got the wiring done for 1. So we've got the amp research harness coming in here. And this is my harness from the OE combining, and there's a diode I've got in here. So let me show you what I did. So on to the second one, I've got the diode I showed you guys that I wired onto the pigtail of the LED. And then this is one of the 2, 18-2 wires that I scabbed on it. This is the factory wiring harness. Where are we at here? Yeah, so here, up around, and then I soldered 2 18-2 wires onto here, and they're inside this loom. One pokes out here, and one continues on to the front light that I just showed you. So, because and what I did down here is what I did on the wiring diagram where I tied these in. I put a diode on the positive lead, and the positive lead is a striped wire. There's 3 wires. You can see it over here. This is the other one. I don't know if I got enough light to show you the colors, but there's 2 blacks and a black with a stripe. Yeah, there's the stripe. Oh, sorry. See the striped wire? That is the positive lead. The other 2 are grounded. So I just spared one grounded lead off and used the other one on the positive and tied on to this 18-2. But before you tie your red on your positive, make sure you put a diode in line up here where you tie in. So diode on the positive lead with the stripe pointed towards the LEDs like in the drawing. And then both of those red wires for both pairs go on the LED side of the diode. So you can see where the diode's at there. I've got this red soldered in on the LED side because we want to be on the opposite side of the diode. If we soldered on here, current wouldn't pass through. So this is power coming from the truck, from the OE lighting, powering the LED. And then if the amp system powers, it will hook onto this diode lead here. So that's this pair. So the amp positive will go here. Then both grounds get tied together and soldered onto this ground lead for the LED. So that's next. Okay, so I taped up that solder joint, twisted the 2 blacks together, twisted them onto the LED black, soldered that. I will tape that up, and then this is the remaining from the amp research goes on the diode lead. And we'll tape it all up, and we're done with this side. So that's the final result. The amp setup and the pair of 18-2s here. On to the other side. Okay, we're on the other side. Sorry, I should have filmed this one before the other side video, just kind of to keep things in order. I was showing you guys wires that were coming from places I hadn't shown yet. So this is the OE harness. The striped one, I've got this diode soldered onto, so you can see the stripe's going to be pointing away from the source towards the LED. And I taped up that solder joint. Then I twisted 2 of these 18-2, and this is just like security cable or speaker cable, 18-2, jacketed stuff, like real lightweight speaker wire essentially. And twisted the 2 blacks together. I paired off one of the blacks here. I just cut it back. I will tape that up and insulate it. And then twisted the 2 reds together. And now I'm going to be soldering those onto this side of the diode. And then we'll be good. We'll have a couple new wires to put into our harness to feed up to the LEDs for OE lighting power. Okay, I think I got this mostly buttoned up. This is the driver's side, so there was extra wire loom there. So that's where I ended up tucking it. So that's the front the end of the front leaf spring where it pokes down. So I've got it kind of doubled back and just spared off there, tied off there. Here's the front motor. And then one light. Wires going both ways because I've got the OE feed and the amp research. There's my second light. And then tying into the rear light harness. Yeah, so it turned out pretty good. I'm pretty happy with how tidy I got the wiring. You know, everything's tucked up and run well above the rockers, which is what you want. You don't want anything hanging or anything that's going to snag. So actually that there needs a little bit of work. Get that loop a little tighter, but yeah, so you can see the white zip ties. So what amp gives you, you need way more, especially if you're going to do what I did. But I over zip tie instead of under zip tie. I don't like stuff hanging or being loose. So but yeah, so install pretty well complete. Let's try it out. Okay, well, we know the lights are, at least the OE feed for the lights is working. They're on, and I still have the fuse out on the amp research controller. So both sides of the truck, we've got lights. One thing to keep in mind when you're working on these, if you want the steps down or up and you're going to be in and out of the truck, like I was opening the doors a lot and I didn't want these running. So I pulled the fuse, but keep in mind, when you pull the fuse, whatever state these are in, up or down, you want to put the doors in that matching state when you put the fuse back in. So since I was wiring those lights up, I had the running boards down and I pulled the fuse. That way when I closed the doors, they would stay down. And so did all my wiring on the lights. Now I'm going to put the fuse back in, and I want to make sure that both doors are open so that the system is in the correct state. I'm assuming their box will figure it out. I really don't want to run those motors against the end stops if I don't have to. Mechanical carnage is a nasty thing. So, but both running boards are down now, so I've got both doors open. So we're gonna chuck the fuse back in. There it is. What did I do with it? So hang on, let me put the fuse in. Okay, let's see how we make out. So fuse is in, doors are open. That's cool. Lights on. Try our back door. And these running boards, I didn't film that step putting them on. There's like a couple aluminum, like in here, there's a couple one aluminum piece here, and it slides in a channel. Like underneath here, there's a channel. I don't know if you can see it. Yeah. And then there's two bolt holes that go up through the step. So you can see those two Allen head caps. Those go into that piece of aluminum that slides. So you can basically slide those aluminum blocks anywhere you want, what that means is you can slide the step back and forth on the truck. So you determine where you want the step. So I tried to kind of, on this excursion, get it where I thought, kind of the back, probably an inch or two up from the back door seam. And then that puts me just a little bit behind the front door seam. With the front door open, you're not going to really need to step where the hinge is. So I kind of cheated more towards the back of the truck. But yeah, that pretty well wraps up that install. Hope it helps you. Whether it's a mechanical part of the installation or the electrical bit. But yeah, so I'm just gonna lock the truck and make sure the keyless entry part of the, I guess the lights are still on, aren't they? Yeah, I'll check that later. I'm not gonna make you wait, but yeah, just wanted to make sure the puddle light part of this works, but pretty sure it does since the lights were on when I kicked the truck on. So, but yeah, hope that helps. Guys, have a good one. So we thought we were done. I wanted to let you guys know not all plans always work out. So while that circuit I drew would have been fine if this amp research box used a normal ground, It in fact does not. So what I've got here is, these are the two wires from the LEDs. So we've got a front and a rear. So I've got them isolated. This is the OE wiring harness. So I've got a positive and a negative here. So everything's off. The fuse is in the amp research box. And I've actually got, it's floating. It's like 4.7 volts when everything is off. And the LEDs are not on. They are off right now. So right now, those are both disconnected. If I pop the door open, the step comes down, I get 12 volts on it. The LED comes on, right? All is well. This is how amp intends this to work. Close the door, step goes up, still on the same LED, back to 4.7 volts, LED's off. Here's where it gets really weird, which is why this is all pulled back apart. So the OE harness, this ground is always grounded. So if you would test this versus the frame of the truck, they are connected, which is what grounds normally are on a vehicle. That's what I expected this circuit to be. I expected this black to be actually grounded, and it's not. It's obviously, it's if you test it to ground, actually I could show you guys that. It might be worth it for those that care. If you've watched this long, you probably are curious and interested. So what I'm going to do is go from ground, the truck ground, to the LED ground. And so I've got like 1.9 mega ohms, so that we're definitely not grounded. So back over here, we're going to hook this back up, put this back on DC volts. So I'm on that single LED again, we're off. So what happens that's weird is if you actually ground this, which is what happened when I had it all wired to that print, if you ground this, the LED comes on. And if I don't ground it, it comes off. So there must be a triac or something in that amp research box. So this circuit is not going to work as I drew it, just for the simple fact that these are not truly grounded when things are supposed to be off. So you're pulling their ground low, their whatever they call this. I guess it's not actually a ground until it's on. I did test it when you open the door and this actually energizes, they do ground the black, so it goes low when the step is down. When it's up, it's floating, as we see here. So you've got this weird 4.7 volt. So they've got a really odd circuit in that box, but I still want my keyless entry puddle light set up. So I'm gonna wire back up the way I wanted it to be for the OE lighting, and all I'm gonna do is disconnect the amp lighting, because I started thinking about it, and anytime the door's open and the step would be down, the interior lights are on, so the factory running board lights are on. So anytime the amp lights would be on, this is going to be energized. So there's really no reason for me to wire the amp LED wiring up. So we're just going to go with the OE power. And if you guys want that, if you want, you know, the keyless entry, that you want the lights to come on like I was after, don't wire the amp light wiring up, just wire to this OE wiring like I did before. But the thing is, you don't need any diodes. The only reason I needed diodes here was I was trying to connect two circuits together. So you could just go striped wire to the red on the LEDs and the one of the other two to the black, and you're good to go. Super simple, way easier wiring than I did. So I did a lot of extra work and messing around really for nothing, because I'm gonna disconnect the amp wiring so I can, you know, allow this OE wiring to run the LEDs. But yeah, the way this floats at 4.7 volts and not being grounded when off, these two circuits can't coexist. So it is what it is. I'll get under here, do some more wiring, and I'll show you the final result here when I'm done. Okay, I finished it up. So it is wired lights only to the OE lighting. So I got my keyless entry. I'm standing in the dark here in the garage. If I hit unlock, that's what I was after, puddle lights. So the interior lights, OE, and the LEDs come on. So you would not get this with amp research's wiring. you would only get these lights to come on if the running board was down. But as you guys know, if you pull the handle, oh, I'm not unlocked. Now, if I pull the handle and the running boards come down, as you guys know, the interior lights stay on, so the running board lights also stay on. So I've lost nothing by disconnecting the amp research lighting, other than fixing the wiring issues I had. So I'm hoping I'm saving you guys a lot of time. If you want this functionality, just wire the OE lights to the LEDs straight away and save yourself some time. So super cool. If you lock it, I'm sure you guys noticed when I locked it before, the LEDs stayed on. That was because of that wiring issue I had. So pretty neat. Off and on, the keyless entry. Good stuff. I'll show you guys one more thing before I end the video. I had to turn the garage lights back on so you'd see this. So the front edge of the running board itself is right here. And the lowest clearance spot on the top of this running board, I've learned, is about the back 1/4 inch of this plastic on the front. And on these trucks, on this rocker panel, there is a little wag in there's 2 of them actually. One here, one here. I don't know if you can see it. Let me show you from the bottom. It's probably easier to see. Yeah, so that one and that one. Yeah, this is way better angle. So this about right here is the highest clearance point on this when this thing comes out. And ideally, you want it to line up with this first divot. That'll cause this nut to rub. So I chased this for quite a while, and the top of this plastic right in here, as this would deploy, you'd hear clunk. And what it was doing was I had it lined up back here is where I liked the running board front to rear, and it would rub this rocker panel in here, this piece. And so I finally figured out there's this little clearance, I don't know what it is, crimp, I don't know what you call it, on the rocker panel, but it will clear really nice if you line it up the way this is right now. So what you're after is the front 1/4 inch, or I guess this is the front of the truck. So the rear 1/4 inch of this plastic bit, you want to line up with this crimp, and it clears really nice. The other thing I did to help, to let you guys know, is these Allen cap screws. You can probably see I can put the washer between the 1/4 panel and the amp research assembly. So I took this back out, took the washer off, and put it between, so you can see there's a little bit of a gap. And what that does is that ever so slightly angles the running board down, and it helps it to clear the 1/4 panel when it starts to deploy. So between those 2 mods on both sides of the truck, it is completely clear to come down. It clears really nice. You don't hear any interference whatsoever when it. So there's nothing clunking, nothing touching. Yeah, totally clear now. So that's how it's working on both sides. So a couple little tips and tricks. That's the stuff that took me quite a bit of time to fault find and figure out. So hopefully it saves you guys some time, and you can throw a pair of these on your Excursion if you want, and they work smooth because they are pretty cool. And the one thing, my wife is pretty darn short, and I'll show you guys. I laid the keys over here. The joys of a 20-some-year-old vehicle. The actuators start getting a little bit cranky. Anyway, my truck on me comes, I don't know, 8 inches above my knee. It's quite a bit. And these steps are really, they come down low. I mean, that's 4 inches below my knee. So compared to the stock running boards, I'm excited to show these to her because she's going to be pretty stoked at how low they come in order to get in and out of the vehicle, just because they deploy and come back up again. So that's pretty cool. I think she'll be excited about that. So if you're after low running boards that come real low on the truck, these are pretty cool. These definitely will help with that. So yeah, that wraps it up. But thanks, guys. Appreciate you hanging in and hopefully learning something. Hopefully I helped you guys. Cool. Thanks for watching.